Morning, I'm Anna Palmer.
And I'm Jake Sherman.
And welcome to the Daily Punch, brought to you by Punchbowl News. It's Tuesday, May 12th, 2026. Let's get in the mix. Here are your Washington headlines of the day. Number one, is Trump doing enough on affordability? Number two, Hegseth's Hill Gauntlet. And number three, what we're watching in Nebraska and West Virginia primaries today. All right, Jake, let's get to it. Affordability has been the buzzword. The Trump administration has said there isn't an affordability problem. Now they are saying, hey, guys, wake up. We need you to be doing more when it comes to housing, when it comes to a potential gas tax holiday. Is this pivot going to be enough for Republicans as they look to the midterm election?
I don't know. How does that sound? Let's just review a few things. Trump administration yesterday, or the president himself, called for a gas tax holiday. The federal gas tax is 18.4 cents per gallon. It is a statutory. So Congress, theoretically, unless there's something novel like the administration will stop collecting the tax, Congress needs to pass it. Right? Congress needs to pass a bill to suspend the gas tax, rather. That is something that I think Congress can do. And we reported in the PM edition last night that they could do this as soon as next week in the House of Representatives. But if you think about it, Anna, the point that we're making this morning in the top is that this Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde kind of dynamic, right? Which is, the administration is calling for a gas tax holiday, trying to get a long-stalled affordable housing bill passed, but then at the same time, they're involved in this ballroom situation. They're seeking $1 billion for security, which I am very bearish, especially after yesterday. I was talking to some senior House Republicans who were just saying no chance we could have our moderates vote on this. And yesterday was amazing. The president had the Indiana football team at the White House, the national champion Indiana football team, and was talking about football, and all of a sudden said, I'm really good at building ballrooms. So it's difficult for Republicans to talk about affordability and to have a message on affordability when the president keeps talking about the ballroom and all this, and the granite outside the White House, the blue pool that he's doing that went from $1 million to $13 million in just a couple of weeks. It's a difficult message for Republicans to hold, right?
Yeah, I also think, Republicans don't have a great message that is landing with voters right now. You've got defensive leadership when it comes to Senate Majority Leader John Thune. You've got the speaker saying, hey, it's all about one big, beautiful bill. Well, that was passed a while ago, and so far, the implications of it or the benefits of it have not been able to kind of galvanize the American voter. I think the question and why you see a shift here is reality is hitting, right? They understand that so far this hasn't been enough. Gas is extremely high. A gas tax holiday isn't going to deal with the fundamentals, right? The problem of what's happening with Iran and in the Middle East. So this, to me, it feels like a Band-Aid, the idea that, is Trump really going to put his full political power into a housing bill that's been stalled? We'll have to see. That is one of the big issues that has been a dynamic. Again, the House versus Senate, not on the same page.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a second on the housing bill, which is a big issue for Congress right now. The housing bill that the Senate passed, and they passed it with an massively overwhelming vote. It was a bipartisan vote. The House Republican leadership has taken pains, has been incredibly supportive of the House rank and file, which does not want to pass this thing. We reported last week the House Republican leadership, is encouraging the Financial Services Committee, which has jurisdiction over this housing bill, to tinker away, but keep the tinkers very, very tight here so the Senate can pass their bill. They have not shown any interest, the House Republican leadership, in passing the Senate housing bill. So we're looking at another round of back and forth over this housing bill. I don't think this this truth from the president yesterday to pass the housing bill will change Republicans' tune on the housing legislation, but I do think it might prompt them to act quicker, or to get their act together pretty much, on passing a bill with their own changes. And again, I think on the gas tax holiday, this is something that Congress is going to move very quickly on. But listen, I was talking to a senior House Republican yesterday who made the case that on the midterms, there's a lot of game yet to be played. and this is just their view. I'm not saying it's the right view, but they were saying, listen, this election is very different from every other election. Every election is different, so that doesn't really move me that much, right? It's not like you play the same election over and over again. And you have a lot of time left, and the war, in this person's view, the war is going to end. Gas prices will go down. I'm not sure that's the case.
Everything's going in their way, man. That sounds like they're just,
I'm not sure that's the case, to be frank with you.
Clearly, the price of gas is a concern to vulnerable Republicans, right? That sounds like, a very optimistic person on Capitol Hill that all things are going to start going in Republicans' way, right? This seems to me to be a reality check by Trump and his allies to say, okay, we do need to do something here on affordability. The housing bill is right in front of us. Gas tax is something that would give people relief. There's not a lot of other things that they have right now that they're working on that is going, anything on healthcare has basically been done, is donezo, right? They don't have a lot of relief options that the American public is going to feel in a short matter. And at the same time, they're having to defend this $1 billion ballroom and security funding for it. It's going to be a tough thing. And you can, as we said yesterday, the attack ads write themselves.
They do. And I'll just say one more thing. The gas tax holiday, when Biden called for it, and former President Joe Biden, did call for it in 2022, John Thune said it was a Band-Aid, and Republicans rejected it. And what Thune says now is, well, that was in the context of a bad energy policy by Joe Biden, which fine, everybody reverses when their own president's in the office. And he said it was a Band-Aid. Guess what, Anna? It is a Band-Aid. And it's a Band-Aid that Republicans feel like they need to apply at this moment because gas prices are $4.52 a gallon. And that is not tenable heading into an election if you're a Republican.
All right, Jake, let's run to the number 2 story of the morning. Let's talk about Hegseth's Hill Gauntlet. Man, he is going to have some tough questions here. The dynamics are different, right? You've got the U.S. war with Iran is, quote unquote, terminated, at least according to President Donald Trump. The Pentagon is drawing down American forces from Germany, and congressional frustration is growing over the slow release of Ukraine aid. You've also got the president in China and the idea of a lot of concern about security and this administration potentially giving up too much or anything when it comes to China is going to be another dynamic.
Yeah, this is going to be a very different day for Pete Hegseth, the Defense Secretary, and Dan Kane, the chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. For those reasons, the president has now said the war's terminated, as you said, and they are appearing in front of appropriations committees. So what's going to happen is lawmakers are going to talk about money. They're going to also talk about strategy, but we've been waiting, and Congress has been waiting for months for a war supplemental. The United States has drawn down hugely on munitions, on stockpiles, on all of those things for this war in Iran. In addition, the United States has given a lot of weapons to Ukraine, which has also hit that stockpile. And we've seen absolutely no evidence that the administration is putting forth a defense supplemental. And I think they'll get a lot of questions on that. I spoke to administration folks yesterday. A supplemental request is not imminent. They told me, I don't know why, but I guess they're just not ready for it. If they are going to put forth the supplemental, it's going to have to be in reconciliation. I don't see any way Democrats are going to vote for a supplemental unless there's some sort of trick they have up their sleeves and something they can put in this thing that will, that will be a sweetener. I just don't see it. I don't see it in any way, shape, or form. So we'll keep an eye on that.
Also worth noting, lawmakers from both parties going to be asking about this decision to remove the 5,000 troops from Germany.
Yes, big time.
And what that means, because as you say, they want more funding for their focus. That is something of concern for a lot of members of Congress. Let's move on to the number 3 story of the morning. Primary day in Nebraska and West Virginia. Let's talk about Nebraska. I feel like this is a state that we often aren't necessarily paying super closely to their primaries, but there is a lot happening on the ground there.
Yeah, the blue dot, as it's called, the Nebraska 2nd District, which is the district that Don Bacon is vacating. Denise Powell and State Senator John Kavanaugh are locked in an increasingly nasty primary to succeed Bacon. This is a district that Kamala Harris won, which is one of the very few in America, the Republican-held district that Kamala Harris won. This has been an expensive primary. Progressives are lining up behind Kavanaugh. He's backed by the CPC, Congressional Progressive Caucus PAC. Moderates are behind Powell, a small business owner who's benefited from outside spending from groups affiliated with the New Democrat Coalition and the CHC. In addition, we have a very confusing Senate Democratic primary. Independent Dan Osborne is trying to challenge Pete Ricketts, but for Osborne to have a chance, he needs no Democrat on the ballot. That is, Cindy Burbank is on the ballot right now trying to win the primary. She has said she'll drop out if she wins, which is something.
Interesting campaign message.
Yeah.
Vote for me and then I'll drop out.
Vote for me so the other guy could kind of win or maybe win. I don't know, whatever. This is just bizarre. And to run against Pete Ricketts, a very wealthy former governor in a, listen, I guess it's a good year for Democrats. So they consider, I don't know why Dan Osborne doesn't just try to win the Democratic nomination and say he's an independent, but what the hell do I know? That's why I don't get
You're
paid
not a
the big bucks.
strategist,
Just an onlooker. Just an onlooker.
I also think interesting to see West Virginia, Shelley Moore Capito, heavily favored to win her primary. She's facing 5 challengers, though, Jake. It'll be interesting, I think, just to see, where did the votes come down? Is there any sentiment that there's an anti-Washington, anti-Trump in a state like West Virginia? Unclear, but, everybody's reading the tea leaves, trying to figure out what some of these early, even primary voters are thinking of ahead of the main event in November. All right, we will leave it there. Thanks so much for listening. We appreciate it. If you like the Daily Punch, share it on social media. Tell your friends. It's the best way to find out about us. And of course, you can go deeper on all things Punchbowl News and sign up for our free morning newsletter at punchbowl.news. Have a great day and stay safe, everybody.